Are you looking for the best mirrorless cameras? In this video we will look at some of the 6 best mirrorless cameras on the market. Before we get started with our video, we have included links in the description. So make sure you check those out to see which one is in your budget range. Number 1. Sony A7CR. If you want the smallest body you can get but still want a full frame sensor, the Sony A7CR, 7/10 wired recommends, offers the most bang for your buck. It's plenty small and light, even with a lens. The 61MP sensor offers amazing detail and very good dynamic range. Throw in some best-in-class autofocus with great subject tracking, and you have a camera that can handle just about anything. It's expensive, but if you can afford it, this is a great camera. Specs: 61-megapixel full-frame sensor, 8 fps, 4K/60p with a roughly 1.2x crop. Single SD card slot. Alternatives: there are regrettably few travel-friendly full-frame cameras, but the Fujifilm X100V, 9/10 wired recommends, is a wonderful travel cam with a great 26-megapixel APS-C sensor. It's a few years old, but it's still one of our favorite cameras, especially for travel and street photography. Unlike the other cameras in this guide, the X100V has a fixed 23mm lens, 35mm equivalent in full frame. The X100V is a joy to use and produces wonderful images. The main problem is that a TikTok-inspired obsession with this camera has driven the price up to insanity levels. Don't pay more than $1,400 for this one. Number 2. Panasonic Lumix S5. Panasonic's S5 is a compact, full-frame mirrorless with a very sharp 24-megapixel sensor. The S5 mostly holds its own against the rest of these full-frame cameras in still image quality, but what really sets it apart is the extra video features you won't find elsewhere. Support for vlog recording, anamorphic 4K support, and uncropped 4K at 30 frames per second top the list. The result is a camera that's perfect for hybrid video and stills shooters. The one place this camera struggles is autofocus, especially when shooting video. That's where the new S5 should be a significant step up. It features a new chip with onboard phase detection and, from early reports, appears to bring the S5's autofocus up to snuff. Unfortunately, it's also significantly more expensive at $2,300. We haven't had a chance to test this one, but if you can afford it, on paper it's well worth the upgrade. Both S5s use the L-mount lens system, an effort to do for full-frame what Panasonic did for Micro Four Thirds, create a unified lens mount standard. Leica is the driving force behind the L-mount, but Panasonic and Sigma also have plenty of glass in L-mount. That means there's no shortage of lenses for the S5. If your primary use case is video, be sure to check out our guide to the gear and tips you need to make studio-grade home videos. Specs: 24-megapixel full-frame sensor, no AA filter, 5 fps with autofocus, 4K/30 fps video, dual SD card slots. Number 3. Canon EOS R. The Canon EOS R is a mirrorless option for people who loved their DSLRs. It's a hefty beast, with a solid feel that reminds me of what I used to love about film cameras. Even the on-off switch is made of metal. The sensor is typically Canon, which is to say sharp, with good contrast and the characteristic Canon color rendering. It's slightly warmer in tone than some of the others here. The phase detect autofocus is fast and accurate. One thing to note: the rumor mills suggest that the R might be getting an update in 2023. One thing I really like is that when you change lenses there's a cover that swings out to protect the sensor from dust. The exception is if you have an adapter and you remove the lens but not the adapter. Every camera on this list would benefit from adopting this feature. The R-mount lens system uses a very wide base diameter, like the Nikon system, and achieves similar results. There are fast R lenses around. The better news for those already invested in Canon glass is that there's a $99 adapter that will let you affix just about any older Canon lens to the R. Specs: 30-megapixel full-frame sensor, 8 fps with autofocus, 4K/30 fps video, dual SD card slots alternatives. Canon has gone all in on mirrorless in the past couple of years, with everything from this budget R model to the massive, and massively expensive, R5, $3,500. They're all nice, especially if you have a lot of those sweet legacy Canon lenses. Number 4. Sony A7RV. The new A7RV uses the same 61-megapixel full-frame sensor as its predecessor, which remains largely unmatched, unless you opt for medium-format cameras. If that's not enough, there's a 16-shot, high-resolution mode that can create 240 MP images, so long as your subject is static. For example, a landscape. The dynamic range is outstanding, and the ability to recover detail in the shadows is something you'll only believe once you do it yourself. The primary improvements over the previous model are increased autofocus speed and intelligence, a huge new viewfinder and, although this might sound strange, an option for smaller RAW files. Fully uncompressed RAW files from this sensor run around 125 megabytes per image. There are now options to shoot large, medium or small lossless compressed RAW files. I haven't tested this model, but I will update this guide after I do. Specs: 61 megapixel full frame sensor, 10 fps with full of 12-bit RAM, 6 fps for 14-bit RAW, 8K/24 fps video, dual SD, CF cards. Number 5. Fujifilm X-T4 mirrorless camera. The Fujifilm X-T4, 9/10, Wired recommends, is the best camera I've tested this year. Fujifilm uses APS-C sensors, which are smaller than the full-frame sensors in the rest of the cameras in this guide. But with the 40-megapixel sensor in the new X-T4 you'd be hard-pressed to tell the difference. Images from the X-T4 are sharp, wonderfully detailed, and don't suffer too much noise. This sensor also manages to retain that uniquely Fujifilm look. The X-T4 is more focused on the shooter of stills, while the updated X-H2, $2,299 with XF16 80mm lens kit, is the best option for those more interested in video. The camera body's design is reminiscent of film cameras, and perhaps the best thing about it is how seldom you need to use digital controls. ISO, shutter speed, exposure compensation, and shooting modes are all accessible via physical dials. Plus, Fujifilm's excellent line of lenses is surprisingly affordable relative to some of the others on the list, making this one of the least expensive systems to invest in. My only real gripe is the grip. It's on the small side for a body of this size. Specs: 40 megapixel external APS-C sensor, 15 fps with full of 4K/60 fps video, dual SD cards alternatives. The Fujifilm X-T4, $1,700, remains a solid choice, especially if you want a fully articulated rear screen, which is helpful when shooting video of yourself. Also, the X-H2 has a rotating screen, which the X-T4 lacks. Number 6. Sony A7 IV camera. Sony's A7 IV, 9/10, Wired recommends, is a 33-megapixel, full-frame camera capable of incredibly sharp images, with excellent dynamic range and the best autofocus system on the market. It's compact and light enough to carry all day without back strain, and the grip is comfortable. The 5-axis image stabilization means you can hand-hold it in lower light, and the wide range of 4K video options make it the best all-around video and stills combo on this page. There are better still cameras, see the Sony A7 RIF below, and better video cameras, but nothing else combines the two quite as well. What I don't like about it, or any other Sony, is the labyrinthine menu system. Luckily there are enough customizable buttons that it's not too difficult to set things up, so you never need to dive into the menus. Specs: 33 megapixel full frame sensor, 10 frames per second, FPS, 7K oversampled 4K/30 fps video, SD and express cards alternative. If you don't need the new autofocus features, the A7i remains a solid choice, and it's frequently on sale for under $1,800.